At a certain church, the minister kept getting irritated every Sunday. He was getting irritated because each Sunday, just a few minutes into the sermon, a certain older man sitting out there right in front of him in the pews would bow his head and fall asleep. Well, one Sunday after the service, the minister went up to the man's young grandson, who always sat next to his grandfather in church. The minister went up to him and said, "Billy, I have an offer to make to you. I'll pay you 25 cents every week if you keep your grandfather awake through the whole worship service. If you see him close his eyes and start to nod off, I want you to poke him and nudge him. Is it a deal?" And Billy nodded his head and agreed. Well, on the very next Sunday, as he usually did, Billy was sitting right next to his grandfather. And doing as he usually did, a few minutes into the sermon, the grandfather closed his eyes and fell asleep. Well, right after worship that day, the minister ran up to Billy and said, "Well, what happened? I thought we had a deal." But Billy replied, "My grandfather made me a better offer. He's now paying me $1 a week to leave him alone and let him sleep." Wake up. Be alert. That was the message that the Apostle Paul wrote to those Christians there in Thessalonica. But Paul was telling those Christians to be awake and to keep alert, not because they were in the habit of falling asleep during worship services. No, Paul was telling those Thessalonian Christians to be awake and to keep alert to what they were doing with their lives. Because as Christians, we believe that one day Jesus will return. And when that happens, it will be like a great light will be shined upon us. And we'll be judged based on what we've done with our lives. But the question that the Thessalonians had is pretty much the same question that many of us have as well. We ask, if Jesus is going to return, when is it going to be? If Jesus is going to return, what date should we put down on our calendars? After all, for many people these days, they don't do anything that's not there on their calendars. They go from doctor's appointments to haircut appointments to lunch appointments to business appointments. And the same thing even starts with children. I still remember the first time I ever heard the term play date. I was talking on the phone with my brother quite a number of years ago now, and he told me that his daughter had a play date later that day. And so I had to ask him, what is a play date? And a play date, of course, is where one child gets together with her parents, and they call up another child and their parents, and they compare calendars and schedules and figure out when the two children can get together and play with each other. I realize that I'm ancient. The kids at Youth Club remind me of that every week. But somehow I managed to grow up with never having one play date in my life. If it was a Saturday afternoon and I wanted to play wiffle ball with someone, I'd just get on the phone to one of my friends and call up Pat or Steve or Griffin. We'd get together and play wiffle ball. It never occurred to us to have our families call each other ahead of time and put that on the calendar. But I guess times have changed and people have a desire to know in advance exactly what is going to happen and when it's going to happen. I guess that's why so many people have gotten excited about the Mayan calendar theory. You know, that's where on December 21st, 2012, the Mayan calendar completes a 5,120-year, 6-year cycle. And some people are suggesting that that is going to mark the end of the world. Even though, as far as the Mayan Indians are concerned, their calendar doesn't have anything to do with the end of the world. But still, that is a date. December 21st, 2012, that people can mark down on their calendars and get ready for. Or it's like earlier this year when the radio evangelist Harold Camping came out and announced that according to his calculations, Jesus was going to return and the world would come to an end on May 21st. Well, people got all excited about that and wrote May 21st down on their calendars. But May 21st came and went, and Jesus didn't return. And so Harold Camping came out and apologized and said that he apparently had made some slight miscalculations, but that Jesus was really going to return on October 21st. And so people got excited about that and wrote that date down on their calendars. But in case you haven't noticed, we're now about 3 weeks past October 21st, and Jesus still hasn't returned. In the same way, the Thessalonian Christians were saying to Paul, "Okay, Paul, as Christians, we believe that someday Jesus is going to return. But when is it going to be?" And so Paul responds to them by reminding them of what Jesus himself had to say about that matter. That no one knows the time of Jesus' return, that only God the Father knows. And God isn't letting us in on the secret. God the Father isn't even letting Jesus in on the secret. But know this, Paul says, when Jesus returns and judges us, it will be at an unexpected time. It will come upon us suddenly and without warning, much like a thief coming in the night. And when that happens, Paul says, it will be like a great light will be shined upon our lives, and everything we've ever done, even those things that we think are hidden and buried, will be exposed to the light of God's judgment. Our problem, though, is that we like those TV commercials that tell us what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. The idea is that the wrongs that we do in secret, in the darkness, can remain there secret in the darkness. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas means